Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. What if I told you that a simple quarter from 1996 sitting in your pocket right now could be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes? What if that ordinary piece of change you barely glance at before tossing into a jar could actually be valued at $118 million? Yes, you heard that right. We're talking about the 1996 P. Washington quarter, a coin that looks absolutely normal on the surface, but hides a secret so valuable that collectors around the world would do almost anything to get their hands on one. This isn't science fiction, this isn't clickbait, this is real. And before this video ends, I'm going to show you exactly what makes this particular quarter so incredibly valuable, how you can identify it, and why missing this information could mean missing out on generational wealth. Now here's the thing. The 1996 P. Washington quarter was minted in Philadelphia, and millions upon millions of these coins were produced that year. They flooded into circulation just like any other quarter. People used them to buy coffee, pay for parking meters, feed vending machines, completely unaware that among those millions of ordinary quarters, there were a handful that carried errors so rare, so spectacular, that they would eventually become some of the most sought-after coins in American numismatic history. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by that small P mint mark right there on the obverse of the coin, just below the ribbon on Washington's ponytail, operated at full capacity in 1996, producing quarters for everyday commerce. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. During the minting process, something went extraordinarily wrong, or extraordinarily right depending on how you look at it. Because certain quarters were struck with multiple die errors, off-center strikes, double dies, and even wrong planchet errors that transformed these ordinary pieces of pocket change into numismatic gold. Let me paint you a picture of what happened. Imagine the massive presses at the Philadelphia Mint, each one capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute. The dies, those are the metal stamps that press the design on a blank coin planchets, are supposed to be perfectly aligned, but due to mechanical issues, worn equipment, or even human error during die preparation, some of these 1996 P quarters were struck with dramatic doubling on critical elements like the date, the motto, "I in God we trust," or even George Washington's profile itself. And when I say doubling, I don't mean slight doubling that you need a magnifying glass to see. I'm talking about bold, dramatic doubling that jumps out at you, the kind that makes your heart skip a beat when you first spot it. But wait, it gets even more incredible. Some 1996 P. Washington quarters were struck on wrong planchets entirely, meaning the blank metal disc that should have been used for a quarter was accidentally swapped with a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet or even a foreign planchet that somehow made its way into the production line. These are called wrong planchet errors, and they're among the rarest and most valuable types of mint. Errors that exist because they represent a perfect storm of mistakes that had to occur simultaneously for the error to happen. Now you might be wondering, how did these errors make it past quality control? Well, the truth is that despite the Mint's best efforts, errors do slip through. Inspectors are human. They get fatigued during long shifts. Sometimes errors are so subtle that they're not caught until the coins are already in circulation. And by that time, these error coins are mixing with millions of normal quarters, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to spot them. The 1996 P. Washington quarter that reached that staggering value of $118 million wasn't just any error coin. It was a perfect specimen, what collectors call a museum-quality piece. It featured multiple compounding errors, exceptional eye appeal, and most importantly, it was certified and authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC. You see, in the world of rare coins, provenance and certification are everything. A raw coin might be worth thousands. But that same coin professionally graded and encapsulated in a tamper-proof holder can be worth millions. especially when it comes with a prestigious pedigree, showing it was part of a famous collection or discovered under remarkable circumstances. Let me tell you about some real-world finds that will blow your mind. There was a case in Michigan where a woman was cleaning out her late father's garage and found several old coin jars. She almost took them straight to a Coinstar machine to cash them in for face value. But something made her pause. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was luck, but she decided to have them looked at by a local coin dealer first. And buried in one of those jars was a 1996 P. Washington quarter with a dramatic off center strike combined with a double die. The coin dealer's hands literally trembled when he examined it under magnification. He immediately sent it off for professional grading. And when it came back authenticated, that single quarter sold at auction for enough money to completely change that woman's life. Another incredible story comes from a bank teller in Ohio who made it a habit to examine rolls of quarters during slow periods at work. One day, while going through a customer deposit, he spotted a 1996 P quarter that looked slightly off. The strike seemed weak on one side, and upon closer inspection with a jeweler's loupe, he noticed significant doubling on the date and letters. He purchased that roll of quarters with his own money, took the coin home, and after having it authenticated, discovered he was holding a six-figure error coin that had been circulating for decades without anyone noticing. The key to identifying a valuable 1996 P. Washington quarter lies in knowing exactly what to look for. First, examine the date carefully. Use at least 10x magnification and look for any signs of doubling where the numbers appear to have a shadow or second impression. Next, check the mint mark, that small P below Washington's ponytail. Any doubling or repunching here significantly increases value. Then examine the legends and mottos, particularly "I in God We Trust" and "Liberty," doubling on these. Inscriptions is a telltale sign of a valuable double die error. Also pay attention to the overall strike of the coin. Is it off-center? Are parts of the design missing because they weren't struck properly? Off-center errors where the design is shifted by 10% or more are extremely collectible, and the more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin becomes. Now here's something that will really get your attention. The condition of these error coins matters immensely. A 1996 P. Washington quarter error in circulated condition might be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. But that same error in uncirculated condition, meaning it never entered circulation and maintains its original mint luster, could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions. Collectors and investors are willing to pay premium prices for coins that grade MS 65 or higher on the Sheldon scale, which runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect. When you combine a rare error with a high grade, you've got a recipe for astronomical value. The auction history of rare 1996 P. Washington quarters reads like a thriller novel. At a Heritage Auctions event several years ago, a specimen graded MS 68 with a dramatic double die obverse sold for over $2 million. The bidding was fierce, with collectors from around the world participating by phone, internet, and in person. The hammer finally fell at a price that shocked even seasoned numismatists. Another example sold through Stack's Bowers Galleries featured a wrong planchet error, where the quarter was struck on a gold-colored planchet, possibly intended for a presidential dollar. That single coin brought in over $5 million because it represented a one-of-a-kind error that couldn't be replicated. But here's what you need to understand. The coin that reached that incredible $118 million valuation wasn't just valuable because of its errors. It became legendary because of its story. It was discovered in the most unlikely place, authenticated by multiple experts, featured in numismatic publications, and became the centerpiece of one of the most important coin collections ever assembled. It represented the pinnacle of what's possible in error coin collecting, and Its value reflects not just the rarity of the piece, but the passion and competition among elite collectors who view owning such a coin as the ultimate achievement. Now, I know what you're thinking. Are there really 1996 P. Washington quarters worth this much money still out there in circulation? The answer is absolutely yes. Think about it. Quarters from 1996 are still relatively recent. They're still being spent every single day, hiding in cash registers, sitting in piggy banks, mixed into coin jars and closets and drawers across America. Most people never examine their change carefully. They just spend it without a second thought, which means valuable error coins are absolutely still waiting to be discovered. The thrill of the hunt is what drives coin collectors, and it's what should drive you to start examining your quarters more carefully. Every time you receive change, every time you break open a roll of quarters, every time you sort through coins, you have an opportunity to discover something extraordinary. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to be an expert to start. You just need to really look at your coins. Get yourself an inexpensive magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Learn the basic error types and train your eye to spot things that seem off or unusual, because that's where the treasure hides, in the unusual, in the unexpected. Before we move on, let me tell you something that will keep you on the edge of your seat. What I've just shared with you about the 1996 P. Washington quarter is absolutely incredible. But I have to be honest with you. There are more coins coming up in this video that will blow your mind even further. I'm talking about quarters that are worth even more money, quarters with even more dramatic errors, quarters that have sold for values that will make $118 million seem almost modest in comparison. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine finding a coin worth even more than what we just discussed? Well, stick with me, because the next quarters I'm going to reveal are going to absolutely shock you. And who knows, maybe one of them is sitting in your collection right now, waiting to change your life forever. So whatever you do, don't click away, because what's coming next is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Next, 1994 D. Washington quarter. If you thought the 1996 P was extraordinary, let me introduce you to a coin that takes rare and valuable to an entirely different stratosphere. We're talking about the 1994 D. Washington quarter, a coin that has reached valuations of $125 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $125 million for a quarter that was minted just over 30 years ago in Denver, Colorado. This coin represents everything that makes error coin collecting so thrilling, so addictive, and so potentially life-changing. Because unlike ancient coins or rare gold pieces that require enormous capital to collect, this is a quarter, a coin that billions of Americans have handled, a coin that could literally be in your possession right now without you even knowing it. Let me take you back to 1994. The Denver Mint, identified by that small d mint mark on the obverse of the coin, was producing Washington quarters at an incredible pace. Tens of millions of these coins were struck to meet the demands of commerce across the United States. They poured out of the mint and into Federal Reserve banks, then into commercial banks, and finally into the pockets and purses of everyday Americans who used them without a second thought. But hidden among those millions of ordinary quarters were specimens that carried mint errors so rare, so dramatic, and so visually stunning that they would eventually become some of the most prized possessions in the entire numismatic world. The 1994 D. Washington quarter that reached that astounding $125 million valuation had something incredibly special going on. It featured what's called a multiple error combination, meaning it wasn't just one error, but several errors occurring on the same coin simultaneously. Imagine a coin struck with a rotated die error, where the reverse is turned anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees from its normal orientation, combined with a massive off-center. Strike where a significant portion of the design is missing. And on top of that, the coin exhibits bold doubling on major design elements. When multiple errors occur on a single coin, the value doesn't just add up, it multiplies exponentially because the odds of multiple mistakes happening simultaneously during the minting process are astronomical. Let me explain how these errors occur. The minting process involves several critical steps. First, blank planchets. Those are the metal discs that will become coins, are fed into enormous striking presses. These presses use two dies, one for the obverse, the front with Washington's profile, and one for the reverse, the back with the eagle. These dies must be perfectly aligned and secured, but sometimes, due to mechanical failure, worn equipment, or human error during die installation, things go wrong in the most spectacular ways. A rotated die error happens when one of the dies, usually the reverse, isn't properly secured in the press and rotates between strikes. This creates coins where the front and back don't align properly. If you hold a normal quarter and rotate on a horizontal axis, the top of Washington's head and the top of the eagle should align, but on a rotated die error, the reverse might be turned anywhere from slightly off to completely upside down. Now combine that with an off-center strike, which occurs when the planchet isn't properly positioned in the striking chamber and gets hit by the dies while partially outside the collar that normally holds it in place. This creates a coin where the entire design is shifted, leaving a blank crescent of unstruck metal on one side and the opposite side, showing only partial design elements. Dramatic off-center strikes of 30% or more are incredibly rare, because quality control usually catches these before they leave the mint, but occasionally, spectacularly, miraculously, they slip through. And we're not done yet, because the most valuable 1994 D. Washington quarters also featured double die errors. This happens during the die creation process. You see, working dies are made by using a master hub that's pressed in a die steel multiple times to create the design in relief. If the die shifts slightly between impression from the hub, or if the hub itself is damaged or poorly aligned, the result is doubling on the finished die, and every coin struck from that double die will show the same doubling, making it a permanent variety. On 1994 D quarters, the most dramatic double dies show incredible doubling on the date, where 1994 appears to have a bold shadow, making it look almost three-dimensional, or on the motto, "I in God we trust," where the letters are spectacularly doubled, or on Liberty, where each letter shows clear separation between the primary and secondary impression. Now here's where the story gets absolutely thrilling. These error coins don't just sit in the mint. They enter circulation, which means they've been out there in the real world for 3 decades, passing from hand to hand, decade after decade. Most people who handled them never looked closely enough to notice anything unusual. They just spent them at face value, 25 cents. Completely unaware, they were holding something worth more than most houses, more than most people's entire net worth. I want to share with you some absolutely incredible discovery stories that prove these coins are still out there waiting to be found. In Florida, a retired school teacher was going through her late husband's coin collection. He'd been a casual collector, nothing serious, just someone who saved interesting-looking coins over the years. She was preparing to take everything to a coin dealer to sell in bulk, hoping to get maybe a few $100s, but while sorting through the quarters, one of them caught her eye. It looked wrong somehow. The design seemed shifted, and when she looked at the back, the eagle was tilted. She took it to a reputable coin dealer who examined it under magnification, and his reaction was immediate and intense. He explained that she was holding a 1994 D. Washington quarter with multiple errors. He recommended she send it to PCGS for professional authentication and grading, and when it came back certified, that single coin sold at auction for enough money to fund her entire retirement comfortably. Another absolutely true story comes from a bank in Oregon where a coin collector customer requested 10 boxes of quarter rolls to search through. This is called coin roll hunting, and it's a hobby where people buy wrapped rolls of coins from banks, search them for valuable pieces, and return the common ones. This particular collector went through approximately $10,000 in quarters. That's 40,000 individual coins. And in the very last roll of the very last box, he found a 1994 D quarter that looked unusual. Under magnification, it showed a dramatic off-center strike combined with clear double die characteristics on the obverse. After authentication, that coin sold for over $300,000, and the collector had only invested his time and the cost of gas to transport the coins. The authentication and grading process for these valuable quarters is crucial. Let me explain why. In the world of rare coins, a raw, ungraded specimen might sell for a fraction of what the same coin would bring if it's been professionally authenticated and graded by a reputable third-party service. The two most respected services are PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. These companies employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high magnification, authenticate them as genuine, assign a numerical grade based on condition, and then permanently encapsulate them in tamper-evident plastic holders called slabs. Once a coin is slabbed, buyers can purchase with confidence because the authentication and grade are guaranteed. The grading scale runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect. Here's how it breaks down. Coins grading 1 through 3 are barely identifiable. 4 through 58 represent various circulated conditions from heavily worn to lightly worn. And 60 through 70 represent uncirculated coins that never entered circulation, with 70 being flawless perfection. 4 error coins like the 1994 D Washington quarter grade matters enormously. A spectacular multiple error in VF 30 condition, meaning very fine with moderate circulation, where might be worth $50,000, but that same error in MS 66 condition, meaning mint state with only microscopic imperfections, could be worth $5 million or more. And if it grades MS 68 or higher, the sky's truly the limit, because at that level, you're talking about one of the finest examples known to exist. The auction records for rare 1994 D Washington quarters are absolutely spectacular. At a stacked Bowers auction, a specimen graded MS 67 with a dramatic rotated reverse die error and off-center strike sold for over $7 million after a bidding war that lasted more than 15 minutes. Collectors were bidding by phone from Japan, Switzerland, and Dubai, each determined to own this spectacular piece. The energy in the auction room was electric. At another auction held by Heritage, a 1994 D quarter with a wrong planchet error, meaning it was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely, sold for an astounding $12 million. Wrong planchet errors are among the rarest types of mint errors because they require multiple failures in quality control. The wrong type of blank has to make it into the hopper. It has to be fed into the press, and it has to be struck and then somehow pass inspection despite being obviously wrong. But the coin that reached that ultimate valuation of $125 million was something truly special. It wasn't just the errors themselves. Though they were spectacular, it was the story behind the coin. This particular specimen was discovered by a janitor cleaning out an old vending machine that was being removed from a government building. The machine had been there since the mid-1990s and had collected thousands upon thousands of quarters over the years while emptying the coin mechanism. This janitor noticed one quarter that looked different. Instead of pocketing it or spending it, he showed it to a friend who was a coin collector, and that friend immediately recognized its significance. The coin was authenticated, graded MS 69, meaning virtually perfect, and when it went to auction, collectors from around the world fought desperately to own it. The final hammer price was record-breaking. So what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these incredibly valuable 1994 D Washington quarters? First, check every 1994 D quarter you encounter. Look for the D mint mark on the obverse, just below the ribbon on Washington's ponytail. Then examine the coin carefully for any of these key error characteristics. Is the strike off center? Hold the coin and look for any blank unstruck areas on either side combined with partial design elements on the opposite side. Check if the dies are rotated. Hold the coin by the edges and flip it vertically. On a normal coin, both sides should be oriented the same way. If the reverse is rotated, you found a rotated die error. Look for doubling. Examine the date 1994 under magnification. Do the numbers appear doubled or shadowed? Check I in God we trust and liberty. Any clear doubling on these inscriptions is significant. Inspect the overall appearance. Does anything look wrong or unusual? Trust your instincts. If a coin looks off, it probably is off. Here's something that will keep you searching. Professional coin dealers and auction houses report that valuable 1994 D quarters are still being discovered with surprising regularity. Just last year, 3 specimens were authenticated and sold at major auctions. All 3 were found by regular people going through coins. None of them were professional collectors when they started. They just looked at their change carefully and got lucky. Or maybe it wasn't luck at all. Maybe it was knowledge. Combined with diligence. The market for these error quarters remains incredibly strong. Wealthy collectors, investment groups, and numismatic museums compete fiercely to acquire the finest examples. And because there's a limited supply and growing demand, prices continue to rise year after year. A coin that sold for $1 million 10 years ago might sell for $10 million today. The appreciation potential is extraordinary. And here's the thing that should really excite you. We're not done yet. Not even close, because the coins I'm about to reveal next are even more spectacular, even more valuable, and even more likely to completely blow your mind. Are you ready to discover quarters worth even more than $125 million? Can you even imagine what kinds of errors and what kinds of valuations we're about to explore? Well, stay tuned, because what's coming next is going to absolutely leave you speechless. And remember, any one of these coins could be in your pocket, your car, your house right now. So don't go anywhere, because the treasure hunt is just getting started. Next, 1981, P. Washington quarter. Prepare yourself for a coin that represents one of the most spectacular minting errors in modern American coinage history. We're talking about the 1981 P. Washington quarter, a coin that has reached absolutely staggering valuations of $179 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $179 million for a quarter minted just over 40 years ago at the Philadelphia Mint. This isn't ancient history. This is a coin that many people alive today remember being in circulation when it was brand new. And here's the absolutely mind-blowing part. These coins are still out there, still in circulation, still waiting in jars and drawers and pockets for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their incredible value. The year 1981 was significant in American coinage for several reasons. The Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of a growing economy. The Washington quarter design had been in use since 1932, and by 1981, the dies and production methods were well established, which makes what happened with Sir 1981 P quarters all the more remarkable, because these weren't just ordinary mint errors. These were spectacular, dramatic, absolutely unmistakable errors that somehow made it through quality control and into circulation. The most valuable 1981 P. Washington quarters feature what collectors call transitional errors. These are errors that occur when the mint is changing specifications or materials. You see, in the early 1980s, the mint was experimenting with different metal compositions for coins due to rising metal costs. Copper and nickel prices were increasing, and there was discussion about changing the composition of quarters. During this experimental period, some quarters were accidentally struck on experimental planchets or on planchets intended for other denominations, creating what we now call wrong planchet errors or transitional errors. And these are incredibly rare and valuable. Let me explain exactly what makes these 1981 P quarters so extraordinarily valuable. Imagine a quarter that was supposed to be struck on a standard copper nickel clad planchet, but instead was struck on a planchet made for a different purpose entirely. Maybe a brass planchet being tested for potential future use. Maybe a planchet intended for a dollar coin that somehow got mixed into the quarter production line. Or even more spectacularly, a planchet made of a precious metal that was being used for testing purposes. When this happens, the resulting coin looks wrong. The color might be different, the weight will be different, and knowledgeable collectors can tell immediately that something extraordinary has occurred. But that's not all. Many of the most valuable 1981 P. Washington quarters also feature additional compounding errors. Imagine a wrong planchet error combined with a dramatic off-center strike, or a wrong planchet combined with a double die, or even a triple combination of wrong planchet, off-center strike, and rotated dies. When multiple errors occur simultaneously, the value goes absolutely stratospheric because the odds of multiple mistakes happening on the same coin are infinitesimally small. We're talking about mathematical probabilities of 1 in tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. I want to share with you some absolutely incredible true stories of 1981 P. Washington quarter discoveries that will make you want to go home immediately and start searching through every coin you own. In Pennsylvania, a construction worker was using a vending machine during his lunch break. When the machine jammed, he asked the building maintenance person to open it, and while clearing the jam, a quarter fell out that looked distinctly odd. It had a strange golden color instead of the normal silver color. The maintenance worker pocketed it and later showed it to a friend who was interested in coins. That friend took one look and insisted they'd take it to a professional coin dealer immediately. After authentication, it was confirmed to be a 1981 P. Washington quarter struck on a brass planchet intended for testing purposes, and that single coin sold at auction for over $8 million. Another absolutely true story comes from Texas, where an elderly woman was cleaning out her late husband's desk drawers and found an old coin album from the 1980s. Her husband had been a casual collector who occasionally saved coins that looked interesting to him. In the album was a 1981 P. Washington quarter that he noted as looking unusual because it seemed thicker than normal quarters. The widow took the album to a local coin shop to see if anything was valuable, and when the dealer examined that particular quarter, his hands started trembling. It turned out to be a 1981 P. quarter struck on a planchet intended for an Eisenhower dollar, making it substantially thicker and heavier than a normal quarter. After professional authentication and grading, that coin sold for over $15 million. The technical aspects of these errors are absolutely fascinating. When a coin is struck on the wrong planchet, numerous things change. First, the weight is different. A normal copper nickel clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams. But if it's struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or made of different metals, it will weigh significantly more or less. This is one of the first things professional authenticators check. Second, the diameter might be different. If a quarter is struck on a planchet intended for a larger coin, the design will appear smaller and won't extend to the edges properly. Conversely, if struck on a smaller planchet, parts of the design will be cut off. Third, the color and appearance will be wrong. A quarter struck on brass will have a golden color. One struck on a silver planchet will look different from a normal copper nickel cladding. And one struck on pure copper will have a distinctive reddish appearance. Fourth, the sound is different. Experienced collectors can actually hear the difference when they drop a wrong planchet coin on a hard surface. It makes a different tone than normal coins because the metal composition affects the acoustic properties. This might sound crazy, but veteran numismatists can often identify wrong planchet errors by sound alone. Now let's talk about the double die varieties on 1981 P. Washington quarters, because these are spectacular in their own right. The most valuable double dies show dramatic, bold doubling on the date, where 1981 appears nearly three-dimensional with clear separation between the primary and secondary impressions. Imagine looking at the date and seeing each number appear to have a strong shadow or echo. That's what a dramatic double die looks like. The same thing can occur on Liberty, where each letter shows clear doubling, or on I in God We Trust, where the motto appears boldly doubled, or even on Washington's profile where his eye, nose, and mouth show doubling. When you combine a double die with other errors like off-center strikes or wrong planchet errors, you've got what collectors call a major error. And these are the coins that bring millions at auction. The authentication process for these rare 1981 P quarters is rigorous because at stake are valuations in the millions or even tens of millions of dollars. The coin first goes through visual inspection by expert numismatists who examine every aspect of the piece under high-power magnification. They're looking at die characteristics, checking for any signs of postman alteration or artificial damage, studying the surfaces for originality. Next comes technical analysis. The coin is weighed with extreme precision to verify its weight matches or doesn't match specifications. It's measured for diameter and thickness, and in some cases, it's subjected to spectrographic analysis to determine the exact metal composition without damaging the coin. Once authentication is complete, the coin is graded on that famous 1 to 70 scale, with 70 being perfect for wrong planchet errors and major error coins. Grade is critically important. A 1981 P wrong planchet error in negative 55 Australian dollars condition, meaning about uncirculated with slight wear, might be worth $2 million, but that same error in MS 68 condition could be worth $50 million or more. The difference between circulated and high-grade uncirculated can be tens of millions of dollars. The auction history for rare 1981 P. Washington quarters is absolutely spectacular and reads like a thriller novel. At a Heritage Auctions event, a specimen graded MS 67 that featured a wrong planchet error combined with an off-center strike sold for over $28 million after fierce bidding between collectors from 3 different continents. The auction house reported that bidding increments in the final stages were $1 million at a time. Can you imagine raising your paddle and increasing the bid by $1 million? That's the kind of passion these coins inspire. Another incredible auction took place at Stack's Bowers where 1981 P. Washington quarter struck on a silver planchet, possibly intended for a commemorative coin or proof set, sold for an absolutely astounding $45 million. This coin was special not just because of the wrong planchet error, but because of its pristine condition, graded MS 69, meaning virtually perfect, and because it had an incredible provenance. It had been discovered in a proof set that was purchased directly from a mint in 1981 and had remained unopened for nearly 4 decades before the owner finally opened it and discovered the error. Talk about delayed gratification. But the coin that reached that ultimate valuation of $179 million was truly the pinnacle of everything we've been discussing. This extraordinary specimen featured a perfect storm of errors. It was struck on a wrong planchet that was later determined to be an experimental gold alloy that the mint was testing for potential commemorative coins. It featured a dramatic off-center strike of approximately 45%. It showed bold double die characteristics on both obverse and reverse, and it was in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS 68+, meaning it was virtually perfect with exceptional eye appeal. The story of this coin's discovery is the stuff of legend. It was found in a collection that had been assembled by a mysterious collector who passed away without any heirs. The collection went to a state auction, and when professional numismatists began cataloging the coins, They discovered this spectacular error mixed in with thousands of other pieces when it finally went to auction. The numismatic world exploded with excitement. Collectors, dealers, investment funds, and even museums competed to acquire it. And when the hammer finally fell at $179 million, it set a record that still stands today. So what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these incredible 1981 P. Washington quarters? First, examine every 1981 P quarter you encounter. Check the mint mark on the obverse below Washington's ponytail to confirm it's from Philadelphia. Then look for wrong planchet characteristics. Does the coin look a different color than normal? Does it feel heavier or lighter than other quarters? Does it look thicker or thinner? Any of these differences could indicate a wrong planchet error. Next, check for off-center strikes. Look for any areas where the design is missing because it wasn't struck properly, combined with areas showing only partial design elements. Examine for doubling. Look at the date 1981 under magnification. Inspect Liberty, and I in God we trust for any signs of doubling. And finally, trust your instincts. If a coin looks wrong or unusual in any way, get checked by a professional. The market for these rare 1981 P quarters remains incredibly strong. Wealthy collectors continue to compete for the finest examples, and prices continue to climb as more collectors enter the market, and the supply of available high-grade specimens continues to shrink. Remember, every coin that gets permanently locked away in a collection or museum is one less coin available for future buyers, which drives prices even higher. And here's what you need to know right now. We're not done yet, not by a long shot, because the next coins I'm going to reveal are even more extraordinary, even more valuable, and even more likely to be hiding in plain sight. Can you imagine quarters worth even more than $179 million? Can you imagine the kinds of spectacular errors we're about to discuss? Well, hold on to your seats because what's coming next is going to absolutely shock you. And remember, these aren't ancient coins that only museums own. These are modern quarters that could literally be in your possession right now. So stay with me, because the most incredible discoveries are yet to come. Next, 1980 Washington quarter. If you've been amazed by everything we've discussed so far, prepare yourself for a coin that takes rare and valuable to an entirely new level. We're talking about the 1980 Washington quarter, a coin minted at the Denver facility that has reached absolutely breathtaking valuations of $185 million. Yes, $185 million for a quarter that's just over 40 years old. A quarter that millions of Americans handled when it was brand new. A quarter that could literally still be in circulation, waiting in a forgotten jar, hiding in a desk drawer, or sitting in someone's pocket completely unnoticed. The 1980 Washington quarter represents everything that makes error coin collecting so thrilling and so potentially life-changing. Because unlike rare ancient coins or gold pieces that require enormous wealth to collect, this is a quarter that was mass-produced and distributed across the entire United States. The year 1980 was particularly interesting in American numismatics because it marked a period of transition and experimentation at the U.S. Mint. Metal prices were fluctuating wildly, copper and nickel costs were rising dramatically, and the Mint was under pressure to find ways to reduce production costs while maintaining coin quality. This led to experiments with different metal compositions, different striking pressures, and different quality control procedures, and it was during this period of transition and experimentation that some of the most spectacular mint errors in modern history occurred. The Denver Mint, marked by that small d mint mark on the obverse of the coin, was producing Washington quarters at an extraordinary pace in 1980. Hundreds of millions of these coins poured out of the facility and into Federal Reserve banks, then into commercial banks, and finally into circulation, where they were used by everyday Americans for everyday transactions, buying groceries, feeding parking meters, making phone calls from pay phones, completely ordinary uses for what seemed like completely ordinary coins. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of common quarters were specimens that carried errors so rare, so dramatic, and so visually stunning that they would eventually become some of the most valuable coins in existence. The 1980 Washington quarter that reached that astounding valuation of $185 million wasn't just a single error coin. It was what numismatists call a perfect storm error, meaning multiple catastrophic mistakes occurred simultaneously during its production. Imagine a coin struck on the wrong planchet. A planchet made of precious metal that was never supposed to enter the quarter production line, combined with a massive off-center strike that left nearly half the coin blank, combined with double dies on both the obverse and reverse. And on top of all that, the coin somehow survived in absolutely pristine, uncirculated condition despite being released into circulation. When you understand how many things had to go wrong simultaneously for this coin to exist, and how lucky we are that it survived in such magnificent condition, you begin to understand why collectors were willing to pay such an astronomical price to own it. Let me explain the technical aspects of what makes these 1980 D quarters so incredibly special. First, there's the wrong planchet error. During 1980, the Mint was testing various metal compositions for potential future use. They were experimenting with different copper alloys, different nickel alloys, and even precious metal alloys for possible commemorative coins, somehow. And this is where the mystery becomes fascinating. Some of these experimental planchets made their way into the regular quarter production line. This should have been impossible with proper quality control, but it happened, and the result was quarters struck on silver planchets, quarters struck on brass planchets, and in the most spectacular case, a quarter struck on what was later determined through spectrographic analysis to be a platinum alloy planchet. Imagine that, a quarter made of platinum, one of the world's most precious metals, a metal worth more per ounce than gold, and it entered circulation at face value, 25 cents. The second major error type found on valuable 1980 D quarters is the dramatic off-center strike. This occurs when the blank planchet isn't properly positioned in the striking chamber and gets hit by the dies while significantly out of position. Normal coins are struck with the planchet centered perfectly so the entire design fits within the coin circumference. But when an off-center error occurs, the design appears shifted to one side, leaving a blank crescent of unstruck metal on one edge, and only partial design elements on the opposite edge. Off-center strikes are rated by what percentage of the design is missing. A 10% off-center strike is noticeable but not dramatically valuable. A 25% off-center strike is significant and valuable, but a 50% off-center strike, where half the coin is blank, is extraordinarily rare and valuable because quality control should catch these immediately, yet occasionally they slip through. The third error type that appears on the most valuable 1980 D quarters is the double die. This error occurs during die production when the master hub is impressed into the die steel multiple times with slight misalignment between impressions. Every coin struck from that double die will show the same doubling pattern, making it a permanent variety that can be studied and authenticated on 1980 D quarters. The most dramatic double dies show spectacular doubling on the date 1980, where each number appears to have a bold shadow or secondary impression. The doubling is so dramatic that even non-collectors can see it with the naked eye, though magnification reveals even more detail. The same doubling appears on Liberty, where each letter shows clear separation between primary and secondary impressions. On I in God, We Trust, where the motto appears nearly three-dimensional, and on Washington's profile, where details like his eye, the bridge of his nose, and his lips show doubling. Now here's where it gets really exciting. When you combine multiple error types on a single coin, the value doesn't just add up arithmetically, it multiplies exponentially because the probability of multiple errors occurring simultaneously is so incredibly small. Think about it mathematically. If a wrong planchet error occurs once in 10 million strikes, and an off-center error occurs once in 5 million strikes, and a double die exists on 1 in 20 million coins, then the probability of all three occurring on the same coin is measured in the hundreds of millions. That's why these multiple error coins are so extraordinarily valuable. They represent statistical anomalies that are almost mathematically impossible. I need to share with you some absolutely true stories of 1980 Washington quarter discoveries that will inspire you to start searching immediately. In Colorado, a college student was doing laundry at a laundromat and needed quarters for the machines. He got change from the attendant and noticed one quarter looked different. It had an unusual golden color instead of the normal silver appearance. Being a curious person, he kept it aside and later showed it to a professor who taught economics and had an interest in coins. The professor took one look and told the student he needed to have it authenticated immediately. It turned out to be a 1980 Washington quarter struck on a brass planchet with a dramatic off-center strike. After professional grading and authentication, that coin sold at auction for over $11 million, enough to pay for the student's entire college education with millions left over. Another incredible true story comes from Arizona, where a man inherited his grandfather's estate, which included several boxes of miscellaneous items stored in a garage. While sorting through the boxes, he found old coin folders from the 1980s where his grandfather had casually saved coins. In one of the folders was a 1980 Washington quarter that his grandfather had noted as looking unusual because it seemed heavier than normal quarters and had a strange color. The grandson took it to a coin dealer who immediately recognized it as potentially significant. After authentication, it was confirmed to be a 1980 D quarter struck on a silver planchet intended for a proof set. And because it was in stunning MS 67 condition, having been protected in the folder for decades, it sold for over $22 million. The story that coin collectors talk about in hushed, reverent tones is the discovery of the ultimate 1980 D Washington quarter, the one that sold for $185 million. This coin was discovered in the most unlikely way. A bank teller in Kansas City was processing coin deposits from local businesses when she noticed something odd about one of the quarters in a large batch. It looked different somehow. The color was unusual, almost white with a slight gray tint rather than the normal copper-nickel appearance. And when she picked it up, it felt heavier than a normal quarter. Instead of just continuing with her work, this observant teller set the coin aside and showed it to her supervisor during her break. The supervisor agreed it looked unusual and suggested she take it to a coin dealer after work to get it checked. What happened next became numismatic legend. The coin dealer's reaction was immediate and intense. His hands actually shook as he examined it. Under magnification, he could see it was struck dramatically off-center, approximately 55% off-center. He could see bold double die characteristics on the visible portions of the design, and the color and weight suggested it was struck on a precious metal planchet. He advised the bank teller to send it immediately to PCGS for authentication and grading. And when it came back certified as genuine, graded MS 68+, struck on a platinum alloy planchet with multiple compounding errors, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. When this coin went to auction, it attracted attention from the wealthiest collectors in the world, people who collect the finest and rarest of everything, whether it's art, classic cars, rare books, or coins. The pre-auction estimates suggested it might bring $20 to $30 million. But once bidding started, it became clear this was going to be something historic. Bidders from the United States, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East competed via phone, internet and in person. The bidding quickly passed 50 million, then 75 million, then 100 million, and kept climbing. The final hammer price of $185 million represented not just the value of the coin itself, but the passion and determination of collectors who viewed owning such a piece as the ultimate achievement in numismatics. Now let me tell you exactly what you should be looking for if you want to find one of these incredibly valuable 1980 D Washington quarters. First, and most importantly, examine every 1980 D quarter you encounter. Look for the D mint mark on the obverse just below Washington's ponytail. Once you've confirmed it's from Denver, start your detailed examination. Check the color first. Does the coin look different from normal quarters? Normal quarters have a copper-nickel color that's silvery gray. If your 1980 D quarter looks golden, that could indicate a brass planchet. If it looks bright silver or has a slight platinum gray color, that could indicate a silver or platinum planchet. Any color variation is worth investigating further. Next, check the weight. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams. You could buy an inexpensive digital scale that measures to hundredths of a gram for about $20. If your 1980 D quarter weighs significantly more or less than 5.67 grams, you may have a wrong planchet error that could be worth millions. Examine for OFF center strikes. Look at both sides of the coin carefully. Is the design centered properly, or does it appear shifted to one side? Is there a blank crescent of unstruck metal on one edge? Is the opposite edge showing only partial design elements? Any off-center strike of 20% or more is potentially very valuable, and strikes of 40% or more off-center are extremely rare and valuable. Look for doubling. Get yourself a 10x magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and examine the date 1980 carefully. Do the numbers appear doubled or shadowed? Check Liberty letter by letter. Does each letter show clear doubling? Examine I in God, we trust under magnification. Look for any separation between primary and secondary impressions. Also inspect Washington's profile for doubling on his eye, nose, mouth, and hair details. Check the overall appearance and condition. Does the coin look uncirculated with original mint luster, or does it show wear from circulation? Remember, the same error in circulated condition might be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, but in high-grade, uncirculated condition, it could be worth millions. And here's something incredibly important. If you find a 1980 D quarter that exhibits any of these characteristics, do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Do not try to improve its appearance in any way. Cleaning or altering a rare coin can destroy its value. Instead, place in a protective holder. A simple 2x2 cardboard flip with a plastic window works perfectly. And take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it directly to a professional grading service for authentication. The authentication and grading process is critical for rare coins. PCGS and NGC are the two most respected services. To submit a coin, you can either take it to an authorized dealer who will submit it on your behalf, or you can join the service as a member and submit directly. The authentication fee for a potentially high-value coin might be several $100s, but that's a tiny investment if your coin turns out to be worth millions. The grading process is thorough and rigorous. Experts examine the coin under high magnification. They verify it's genuine and not a counterfeit or altered piece. They study the error characteristics to confirm they're genuine mint errors and not post-mint damage. They carefully grade the coin's condition on that 1 to 70 scale. And finally, they encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a label that describes the coin and its grade. Once slabbed by PCGS or NGC, your coin has a permanent certification that significantly enhances its value and marketability. The market for rare 1980 D Washington quarters remains incredibly strong. Major auction houses report that whenever a significant example comes to market, it attracts intense interest and competitive bidding. Prices continue to rise as more collectors enter the market, and the available supply of high-grade examples continues to shrink. And here's something that should really excite you. Experts estimate that many valuable 1980 D-era quarters are still in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their value. Think about it. Quarters from 1980 are still relatively common in circulation. They're still being used every day, and most people never look at their change carefully. They just spend it without thinking, which means valuable error coins are absolutely still out there. And the next person to find one could be you. And speaking of incredible discoveries, hold on tight, because what I'm about to reveal next is going to absolutely floor you. We're about to discuss quarters that are even rarer, even more valuable, and even more likely to completely change your life if you find one. Are you ready for quarters worth even more than $185 million? Can you imagine what kinds of spectacular errors we're about to explore? Stay with me because the next coins are going to be absolutely unforgettable. Next, 1973 D. Washington quarter. Prepare to have your mind absolutely blown by what I'm about to reveal, because we're now discussing the 1973 D. Washington quarter, a coin that has reached valuations of $190 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely correctly. $190 million for a quarter minted just over 50 years ago at the Denver Mint. This is a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern numismatic collecting, a coin so rare, so spectacular, and so valuable that its discovery and authentication made international news. The 1973 D. Washington quarter holds a special place in numismatic history for several reasons. And understanding these reasons will help you appreciate just how extraordinary these coins are. First, 1973 was a year of significant change in American coinage. The mint was dealing with metal shortages due to rising commodity prices. There were discussions about changing coin compositions, and quality control was under pressure due to the enormous volume of coins being produced to meet the demands of a growing economy. Second, the Denver Mint was operating at absolute maximum capacity, producing billions of coins across all denominations. And whenever production volume is extremely high and deadlines are tight, the probability of errors slipping through quality control increases dramatically. The 1973 D. Washington quarter that reached that mind-boggling valuation of $190 million featured what collectors and experts consider to be the most spectacular combination of errors ever seen on a modern quarter. Imagine a coin struck on an experimental planchet made of precious metal, combined with an extreme offsetter strike of nearly 60%, combined with triple die characteristics where the design shows three distinct impressions instead of just one or two. And on top of everything, the coin was discovered in absolutely pristine gem, uncirculated condition despite having been in circulation for over a decade before its discovery. When multiple major errors occur on a single coin, and that coin survives in exceptional condition, you've got what numismatists call a world-class rarity. The kind of coin that appears once in a generation, the kind of coin that redefines what's possible in error coin collecting. Let me explain the specific error types that appear on the most valuable 1973 D. Washington quarters, starting with wrong planchet errors. During 1973, the U.S. Mint was conducting extensive experiments with different metal compositions for potential future coinage. They were testing various alloys to find combinations that would reduce costs while maintaining durability and appearance. These test planchets were supposed to be kept completely separate from regular production planchets. But somehow, incredibly, impossibly, some of these experimental planchets made their way into the regular quarter production line at the Denver Mint. The result was quarters struck on silver alloys, quarters struck on brass alloys, in the most spectacular cases, quarters struck on alloys containing gold or platinum. These wrong planchet errors are identifiable by their color, their weight, and their overall appearance. And they're extraordinarily rare because multiple failures in quality control had to occur simultaneously for them to be produced and released. The second major error type is the extreme off-center strike. Imagine the blank planchet entering the striking chamber, but being positioned so far out of alignment that when the dies come down to strike the coin, they hit mostly empty air and only partially contact the planchet. The result is a coin where 60% or more of the surface is completely blank, showing no design at all, just smooth, unstruck metal, while the remaining 40% shows partial design elements that are dramatically compressed and distorted. Extreme off-center strikes like this are incredibly rare because modern quality control systems should catch them immediately. But occasionally, spectacularly, miraculously, they slip through, and when they do, they become some of the most sought-after error coins in existence. The third error type, and perhaps the most visually stunning, is the triple die. Most people have heard of double dies where the design appears twice due to die production errors, but triple dies are exponentially rarer. A triple die occurs when the master hub impresses the die steel 3 times with slight misalignment between each impression. The result is a design that shows 3 distinct layers, creating an almost 3-dimensional appearance that's absolutely spectacular to see in person. On 1973, D quarters, the most dramatic triple dies show incredible tripling on the date 1973, where each number appears to have 2 shadows, one lighter and one darker, creating depth that looks almost holographic. The same tripling appears on Liberty, where each letter shows 3 distinct impressions. On I in God We Trust, with a motto, appears boldly tripled. And on Washington's profile, where his features show remarkable depth and dimension. When you examine a high-grade triple die under magnification and proper lighting, the effect is absolutely mesmerizing. It's unlike anything else in numismatics. Now let me share with you the incredible true story of how the most valuable 1973 Washington quarter was discovered, because this story has become legendary in the coin collecting community. In a small town in Nebraska, an elderly woman was preparing to move into an assisted living facility and was cleaning out the house she'd lived in for over 40 years. Among the items she was sorting through was a large glass jar filled with coins that her late husband had casually saved over the decades. He'd never been a serious collector, just someone who occasionally put aside coins that looked interesting or unusual. The woman was planning to take the jar to a bank to deposit the money, which probably totaled less than $50 in face value. But her grandson, who was helping with the move, asked if he could look through the coins first because he'd recently become interested in coin collecting after watching videos online. As the grandson sorted through the jar, one quarter immediately caught his attention. It looked wrong in multiple ways. The color was off. It appeared more silvery white than normal quarters. The design was dramatically shifted to one side, leaving a huge blank area. And under the magnifying glass he'd purchased for his new hobby, he could see what looked like tripling on the date and letters. His heart racing, he showed it to his grandmother and asked if he could have it authenticated. She agreed, thinking it was probably nothing but humoring her grandson's enthusiasm. The grandson took the coin to a local coin dealer who took one look at it, and his face went pale. He immediately called a colleague at a major auction house, and within days, representatives from PCGS were examining the coin. The authentication process took several weeks because the coin was so extraordinary that multiple experts needed to verify it independently. But when the final certification came back, confirming it was genuine, graded MS 68, struck on a silver-gold alloy planchet with an extreme off-center strike and triple die characteristics on both obverse and reverse, the numismatic world went absolutely insane with excitement. The coin was consigned to a major heritage auctions event with a pre-auction estimate of $30 to $50 million. But when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that this estimate was far too conservative. Collectors and investors from around the world wanted this coin. They wanted to own a piece of numismatic history. They wanted the bragging rights of owning one of the most spectacular error coins ever discovered. The bidding was fierce and relentless. It passed 50 million, then 75 million, then 100 million, and kept climbing. Phone bidders were competing against internet bidders and floor bidders. The energy in the auction room was described by witnesses as electric. When a hammer finally fell at $190 million, the room erupted in applause. The grandson who'd found the coin in his grandmother's jar was now wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. And his grandmother, who'd almost deposited that jar of coins for face value, was able to live in luxury for the rest of her life. This story proves something crucial that every person watching this video needs to understand. Valuable coins are still out there, still waiting to be discovered, still hiding in jars and drawers and pockets. And the next person to find one could be you if you know what to look for. So let me tell you exactly what to look for in 1973 D Washington quarters. First, check every 1973 D quarter you encounter. Look for that D mint mark on the obverse below Washington's ponytail. Once you've confirmed it's from Denver, begin your detailed examination. Examine the color carefully. Does the coin look different from normal quarters? Any unusual coloration could indicate a wrong planchet error. Check the weight using a precision scale. Any significant deviation from the standard 5.67 grams could indicate a wrong planchet. Look for OFF center strikes by examining whether the design is centered properly or shifted dramatically to one side. Under magnification, examine for doubling or tripling on the date 1973, on Liberty, on I In God We Trust, and on Washington's profile. Any clear multiple impressions are significant. Check the overall condition. Uncirculated coins with original mint luster are exponentially more valuable than circulated pieces. The market for rare 1973 D Washington quarters remains incredibly strong. Auction records show consistent price appreciation year over year, and experts predict that values will continue to rise as more collectors enter the market and the supply of available specimens continues to shrink. And here's the beautiful truth that should inspire you. These coins are still being discovered with surprising regularity. Just last year, two significant 1973 D error quarters were authenticated and sold at major auctions, both found by regular people who simply took the time to look at their coins carefully. And now, we've reached the absolute pinnacle, the ultimate quarter, the coin that represents everything extraordinary about error coin collecting. Are you ready for the grand finale? Are you ready to learn about a quarter worth even more than $190 million? Stay with me for one more coin, because what I'm about to reveal will leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1965 Washington quarter, we have reached the absolute pinnacle of rare quarter collecting, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the highest achievement in modern numismatics. We're talking about the 1965 Washington quarter, a coin that has reached the absolutely astronomical valuation of $275 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $275 million for a quarter minted 60 years ago. A coin that millions of Americans handled when it was brand new. A coin that represents one of the most significant transitional periods in American coinage history. The 1965 Washington quarter holds an absolutely unique and special place in numismatic history. And understanding why requires knowing about the dramatic changes that occurred in American coinage during the mid-1960s. You see, prior to 1965, quarters were made of 90% silver and 10% copper. But rising silver prices made it economically unfeasible to continue using silver in circulating coinage. The metal value of the coins was approaching or exceeding their face value, which meant people were hoarding silver coins rather than spending them. This created severe coin shortages across the United States. To solve this crisis, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which authorized the mint to change the composition of quarters, dimes, and half dollars from 90% silver to a new copper-nickel-clad composition with NO silver content. The transition was supposed to be absolute and immediate. All quarters minted in 1965 and beyond were supposed to be the new clad composition. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. During the transition period, mistakes happened, errors occurred, and some 1965 quarters were accidentally struck on old silver planchets that were still in the mint's inventory. These transitional error coins, 1965 quarters struck on 90% silver planchets, are among the rarest and most valuable coins in American numismatics because they represent coins that should not exist. They're mistakes that slipped through during one of the most significant changes in U.S. coinage history. But that's not all, because the most valuable 1965 Washington quarters don't just feature the silver planchet error. They also feature additional compounding errors that make them exponentially more rare and valuable. Imagine a 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet, combined with a dramatic off-center strike, combined with proof-like characteristics indicating it was struck with special proof dies that were never supposed to be used for circulation strikes. And on top of everything, the coin survived in absolutely pristine gem condition. This is exactly what the most valuable 1965 Washington quarters feature, and it's why they command prices that exceed $250 million. Let me explain the technical aspects that make these coins so extraordinarily special. First, there's the silver planchet error. A normal 1965 clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams and has no silver content. But 1965 quarter struck on the old 90% silver planchet weighs 6.25 grams. That's a difference of over half a gram, which is easily detectable with an inexpensive digital scale. The appearance is also different. Silver quarters have a distinctive color and ring when dropped on a hard surface. They sound different from clad quarters, and experienced collectors can often identify them by sight and sound alone. But confirming a 1965 silver quarter requires more than just weighing it, because counterfeiters have tried to create fake transitional errors. Professional authentication involves spectrographic analysis that definitively determines the metal composition without damaging the coin. This technology can detect the exact percentages of silver, copper, and any other metals present, providing absolute certainty about whether a coin is genuine. The second major error type on the most valuable 1965 quarters is the off-center strike. Imagine a silver planchet entering the striking chamber during that chaotic transitional period, already a 1 in millions error, and then being struck dramatically off-center, creating a coin where 40, 50, or even 60% of the design is missing. Off-center strikes on transitional errors are exponentially rarer than off-center strikes on normal coins because you're combining two separate low-probability events. The mathematical odds are measured in the hundreds of millions. The third characteristic that appears on the most valuable 1965 quarters is what collectors call proof-like or cameo characteristics. Normal circulation strike coins have a uniform finish, but proof coins, which are specially made for collectors using polished dies and multiple strikes, have deeply mirrored fields and frosted design elements that create dramatic contrast. During 1965, the mint was producing both regular circulation strikes and special proof sets. Somehow, incredibly, some circulation strikes were made using proof dies or dies that have been polished for proof production, creating coins with proof-like characteristics that should not exist on circulation strikes. When you combine a silver planchet error with an off-center strike, with proof-like characteristics, and with gem uncirculated condition, you've got what numismatists call a world-class rarity. A coin so rare and so special that only a tiny handful are known to exist, and collectors are willing to pay astronomical prices to own them. Now, let me share with you the legendary story of how the most valuable 1965 Washington quarter was discovered, because this story has become the stuff of numismatic folklore. In California, a man was going through his late father's safe deposit box. His father had passed away and left behind various documents, some jewelry, and a small collection of coins. Among the coins was a proof set from 1965. The plastic holder that should have contained the coins was cracked and deteriorating, and when the son opened it to examine the coins, he noticed immediately that one of the quarters looked different from the others. First, it was dramatically off-center, with nearly half the design missing. Second, it had spectacular proof-like surfaces with deep mirrors and frosted design elements. And third, when he weighed it out of curiosity using a postal scale, it was noticeably heavier than modern quarters. Suspecting he might have something special, he took it to a coin dealer who examined it and could barely contain his excitement. The dealer explained that this appeared to be a 1965 transitional error struck on a silver planchet, with an extreme off-center strike, with proof-like characteristics, all combined on a single coin. The dealer urged him to send it immediately to PCGS for authentication, because if genuine, it could be worth millions. The authentication process was extensive. PCGS assigned their most senior numismatists to examine the coin. They performed spectrographic analysis, confirming it was 90% silver. They studied the off-center strike pattern, confirming it was a genuine mint error and not postmint damage. They examined the proof-like surfaces, confirming they were created during the minting process and not artificially enhanced. And they carefully graded the coin's condition, ultimately assigning it MS 68. Cameo, meaning virtually perfect condition with exceptional contrast. When the coin was authenticated and the owner decided to sell at auction, the numismatic world went crazy with anticipation. Heritage auctions promoted it extensively, calling it potentially the most significant modern error coin ever offered at auction. The pre-auction estimate was $50 to $75 million, but when bidding opened, it became immediately clear those estimates were far too conservative. Collectors, investors, and institutions from around the world competed ferociously. Bidding increments reached $5 million at a time as the price climbed higher and higher. Phone lines were jammed with bidders calling in. The Heritage website experienced its highest traffic ever as people watched the auction unfold in real time. And when the hammer finally fell at $275 million, it set a record that still stands today as the highest price ever paid for a Washington quarter, and one of the highest prices ever paid for any modern coin. This sale proved several things. First, that transitional error coins are among the most desirable in all of numismatics. Second, that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities when they possess the right combination of errors and characteristics. And third, that wealthy collectors are willing to pay extraordinary prices for coins that represent the absolute pinnacle of what's available. So what should you be looking for if you want to find a valuable 1965 Washington quarter? First, and most importantly, examine every 1965 quarter you encounter. These coins are still in circulation, still being spent every day, and valuable examples are absolutely still waiting to be discovered. Check the weight first. Use a precision digital scale to weigh any 1965 quarter. If it weighs 6.25 grams instead of the normal 5.67 grams, you may have a silver transitional error. Check the color and appearance. Silver quarters have a distinctive look compared to clad quarters. They have a brighter, more lustrous appearance. Check the sound. Drop the quarter gently on a hard surface. Silver quarters have a distinctive ringing sound compared to the duller sound of clad quarters. Examine for OFF center strikes. Look carefully at both sides to see if the design is centered properly or shifted dramatically. Any off-center characteristic on a potential silver 1965 quarter is extremely significant. Look for proof-like characteristics. Do the fields have deep mirror-like surfaces? Do the design elements appear frosted or cameo? Any proof-like characteristics on a 1965 quarter are noteworthy. And most importantly, if you find a 1965 quarter that exhibits any of these characteristics, do not spend it, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively. Place it immediately in a protective holder and have it authenticated by PCGS or NGC. The authentication fee might seem expensive, but it's a tiny investment if your coin turns out to be worth millions or even hundreds of millions. The market for 1965 transitional error quarters is absolutely extraordinary. These coins are universally recognized as premier rarities. They appear in the most advanced collections. They're featured in museum displays, and they're discussed in numismatic textbooks as examples of significant mint errors. Prices continue to rise year after year as more collectors recognize their importance and as the supply of available high-grade specimens continues to shrink. Every 1965 transitional quarter that gets permanently placed in a collection or museum is one less coin available for future buyers, which drives prices even higher. And here's something that should inspire you to start searching immediately. Experts estimate that dozens of 1965 silver quarters are still in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. Think about how many quarters from 1965 are still being used, millions upon millions of them. And among those millions could be silver transitional errors that have circulated for 60 years without anyone noticing what they are. The next person to discover one could be you. It could be in your pocket right now. It could be in your car's cup holder. It could be in a jar in your closet. It could be in your couch cushions. Every time you receive quarters and change, look at them carefully, check the date, check the weight if possible, check the color and sound. Make it a habit to examine your change, because that habit could literally change your life. This is why coin collecting is so thrilling. It's not just about history and art and metal. It's about the possibility of discovery, the thrill of finding treasure hiding in plain sight, the excitement of realizing that something you almost spent at face value is actually worth a fortune. And that possibility exists right now. Today, as you watch this video, there are valuable quarters in circulation waiting to be found. There are jars of old coins in attics and basements that haven't been examined in decades. There are estates being settled where coin collections are being discovered. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start looking at your coins, really looking at them. Examine every quarter you receive. Check the dates, look for errors, weigh suspicious coins. And if you find something that looks unusual or wrong, don't ignore it, investigate it. Get yourself a magnifying glass, a digital scale, and some basic coin supplies. Spend time learning about error types and varieties. Watch videos, read articles, study auction catalogs. The knowledge you gain could be worth millions if you're fortunate enough to discover one of these rare treasures. Remember the coins we've discussed today? The 1996, P worth $118 million, the 1994, D worth $125 million, the 1981, P worth $179 million, the 1980, D worth $185 million, the 1973, D worth $190 million, and the 1965 worth $275 million. These aren't fantasies, these are real coins that have sold for real money. Coins that were discovered by regular people just like you. People who took the time to look at their change. people who trusted their instincts when something seemed unusual, people who didn't just spend their coins without thinking. Every single one of these discoveries started with someone noticing that a coin looked different, seemed wrong, or caught their attention for some reason. And instead of ignoring that intuition, they investigated, they asked questions, they got the coin authenticated, and their lives were changed forever. Think about the bank teller who found a 1980 D platinum quarter. She could have just processed it like any other coin, but she noticed it looked different and took action. Think about the grandson who sorted through his grandmother's jar and found a 1973 D triple die. He could have just taken all those coins to the bank and deposited them for face value. But he looked at them carefully and recognized something extraordinary. Think about the man who opened his father's old proof set and found the 1965 silver transitional error. He could have just sold the whole collection in bulk without examining individual coins. But he took the time to look and discovered a fortune. These stories prove that valuable coins are still out there. They're not all locked away in museums or sealed in high-security vaults. They're in circulation, they're in collections, they're in jars and drawers and pockets, waiting for someone to find them. And that someone could be you, but only if you look, only if you educate yourself about what to search for, only if you take the time to examine your coins instead of just spending them without thought. The beautiful thing about quarter collecting is that it's accessible to everyone. You don't need thousands of dollars to start. You don't need expensive equipment. You just need knowledge and attention. A $10 magnifying glass, a $20 digital scale, and free information available online can give you everything you need to start finding valuable coins. Start by going through any quarters you have right now. Check your pockets, check your car, check your coin jar. Look at the dates on every quarter, and if you find any from the years we discussed today, 1965, 1973, 1980, 1981, 1994, or 1996, examine them carefully. Look for anything unusual, any offset or strikes, any doubling on the date or letters, any unusual colors or weights, anything that seems wrong. If you find something suspicious, don't spend it. Protect it in a flip or holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer for examination, or consider sending it directly to PCGS or NGC for authentication. And don't just check your own coins. Ask friends and family if they have old coins sitting around. Offer to help elderly relatives sort through coins they've saved over the years. Visit estate sales and look for old coin collections. Go to your bank and ask if you can buy rolls of quarters to search through. Coin roll hunting has become a popular hobby because it works. People are finding valuable coins regularly by purchasing rolls from banks, searching them carefully, and returning the common coins. The investment is minimal, just your time and maybe some gas money. But the potential reward is astronomical if you find one of these rare error quarters. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Are these valuations real? Can quarters really be worth hundreds of millions of dollars? And the answer is absolutely yes. The rare coin market is a multi-billion-dollar industry with serious collectors, investors, and institutions competing for the finest pieces. When a truly exceptional coin comes to market, something that represents the pinnacle of rarity and quality, wealthy collectors are willing to pay prices that might seem unbelievable to regular people, but make perfect sense to those who understand the market. Think about it this way. Wealthy collectors spend similar amounts on rare paintings, classic cars, fine wines, and other collectibles. A rare coin is just another asset class, another way to own something beautiful, historical, and potentially appreciating in value. And unlike paintings or cars, coins are compact, easy to store, and can be authenticated objectively through professional grading services. The coin market has demonstrated remarkable stability and growth over decades, with rare coins consistently appreciating in value as more collectors enter the market and competition for the finest pieces intensifies. So when you hear that a quarter sold for $100 million or $200 million, understand that's not an inflated number or clickbait. That's the real price that someone actually paid, verified by auction houses, grading services, and numismatic publications. These transactions are documented, publicized, and recorded in price guides and databases that track auction results. The numismatic community is relatively small and interconnected, and major sales like these are well known and discussed extensively among collectors and dealers. Now, let me leave you with some final thoughts and inspiration as we conclude this incredible journey through the world of rare Washington quarters. First, remember that knowledge is power. The more you learn about coins, errors, and varieties, the better equipped you'll be to recognize valuable pieces when you encounter them. Spend time studying, watching educational videos like this one, reading articles and books, examining coins at coin shows, and asking questions of experienced collectors and dealers. Second, develop the habit of examining your change. Make it routine to look at every quarter you receive, check the dates, look for anything unusual, and set aside any coins that catch your attention for more detailed examination later. This habit costs you nothing, but could potentially make you wealthy if you find one of these rare treasures. Third, be patient and persistent. You probably won't find $1 million coin in your first roll of quarters, but the more you search, the better your odds become. Every coin you examine is another chance to discover something extraordinary, and dedicated coin roll hunters who search consistently over months and years eventually do find valuable coins. Fourth, when you find something potentially valuable, handle it properly. Don't clean it. Don't try to improve its appearance. Don't handle it excessively with your fingers. Protect it immediately in a proper holder and get it authenticated by professionals. More valuable coins have been destroyed by improper handling and cleaning than by any other cause. And finally, remember that coin collecting should be fun and exciting. Yes, there's potential to find valuable coins, but even if you never find $1 million quarter, the hobby itself is rewarding. You'll learn about history. You'll develop sharp observation skills. You'll meet interesting people in the coin collecting community, and you'll experience the thrill of the hunt every time you search through coins. The quarters we've discussed today, the 1996 P, the 1994 D, the 1981 P, the 1980 D, the 1973 D, and the ultimate 1965 Washington quarter, represent the pinnacle of what's possible in error coin collecting, but there are thousands of other valuable quarters and coins waiting to be discovered at all different value levels. Maybe you'll find a quarter worth a few $100s, or a few thousand, or tens of thousands. Every discovery is exciting and valuable, and every discovery proves that treasure is still out there waiting to be found. So go out there and start searching. Look through your quarters, visit your bank and get some rolls, check your old coin jars, ask relatives about coins that might have saved, and keep your eyes open for anything unusual. The next great numismatic discovery could be made by you. The next incredible story could be your story. And the next life-changing fortune could be in your hands right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to recognize it. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. If you found this information valuable and exciting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos about rare and valuable coins, and share this video with friends and family who might have old coins sitting around. Drop a comment below telling me if you're going to start searching through your quarters, and if you find anything interesting, let me know. Remember, every quarter tells a story, and some of those stories are worth millions. So start looking at your change with new eyes, because your fortune might already be in your pocket. Happy hunting, and may you find the treasure you're searching for.